So DJI have decided to release a dedicated cinema camera. Ooh. Hello, my name is Jonathan Palfrey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe as always, as it massively helps me out. First off, I do apologise for not uploading any videos for the last month or so. I have been working very busy away in the Maldives. It was a great shoot and I was hoping to get some videos up while I was out there, but to be honest, on the few days off that I did have, I just rather went snorkeling than sit in my room editing. I apologise. But I've got plenty of videos to come, including things like the 6K Pro after 6 months and many other videos that you really should subscribe to this channel as I will be releasing them very soon. However, before releasing those, I want to do a very quick take on this new announcement of the DJI Ronin 4D camera, which is first off quite an unusual name. I guess the 4D is to do with the 4-axis that's going on, but this is finally DJI coming into the professional camera industry. We've seen with them with their action cameras, and we've seen them obviously with the little Osmo cameras that basically were taking the drone cameras and putting them on a handheld unit. And I was kind of waiting for, a pro Osmo. We were seeing how good the cameras were getting in a lot of the drones, like the Inspire X5 and X7 sensors were very good. So it made sense the next step would be to put all that technology into a handheld device. However, they didn't quite go down that road. In fact, they went down a completely different direction that perhaps, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. This camera is very unique looking, and all of the YouTubers now have had access to it. I'll get onto that in a bit because there is questions about how DJI decide to promote their products, kind of handing them out to everyone but not for proper reviews, and that is slightly frustrating. So here is more of a kind of honest first impression, frank opinion, I guess, from me, just from what I've seen in these other YouTube videos. First off, what a crazy camera it is. That is a very unique design, that's for sure. Whether that's going to work in every scenario, I'm not so sure. Obviously, it's the 4-axis element, so getting rid of that up and down movement that, gimbals just can't get rid of. That is kind of the beauty of this camera, and I think that is probably its biggest USP over just going with one of their already Ronin gimbals with the camera perhaps you already own. It's having that 4th axis, which looks to work in a very intelligent way. It's not just a case of a mechanical 4th axis that sort of counters your walking movements. It's actually using sensors like from the drone technology that they've got to calculate the distance between it and the floor so it can keep the camera at a perfect height. That is very impressive stuff. That is incredible how that technology is working. That said, from the sample footage I've seen, some of it looks quite impressive, but a lot of it looks very robotic. A lot of it looks very much like a gimbal set on very hard settings, where you don't get the kind of smooth movements. And gimbals have always had this problem, and they always will have this problem. They're never going to be as smooth as, say, a Steadicam, but it definitely felt very robotic in a lot of the movements. And that could be the problem about having it as a complete camera package. When you don't want that look, when you don't want that style, how can you use this camera not as a gimbal camera? It's so great that you can, get these amazing shots with it, but if you can't then go and use it as a handheld camera or with a longer lens, it really does limit its usage unless they were to bring out another camera that can sort of pair with it as a stripped down just sensor and body for handheld use. So quite oddly, we're almost looking for a rougher camera to be released from DJI. So with built-in gimbals, 6K, full frame, and what looks to be very good image quality, all the sensors, or the LiDAR, there's so many clever bits of technology in it. It really is probably the most advanced camera we've ever seen out of any camera manufacturer, which is impressive for DJI's really first going. You can really see they've learned from all their drone technology and their gimbal technology and kind of combined it all together into this camera. And that is all very impressive, and you could argue it's the perfect camera, but as I said, does mean it can only really do one thing really well, and I question whether it's going to be able to do your more day-to-day tasks, such as doing an interview like something like this, or just when you just want standard handheld filming. Now, all the videos have been very vague about the actual image quality. It looks good from what we've seen. It's, you know, fairly impressive. We saw a little bit of dynamic range testing where, you know, highlights were pulled and things, but nothing too serious. Now, fair enough, these reviewers only really had them for like 24 hours. It looked like they had a very limited time with the cameras. So I can see why they didn't really get a chance to really try out the cameras or even learn how to use the cameras well. So maybe that's why the gimbal movements weren't as impressive as perhaps they can actually be once you really learn how to use this camera. I look forward to like Philip Bloom's review, who will obviously go through a lot more detail, and I think we'll get a lot more information about what is good and what is bad about the camera. That said, it has been quite vague on all those details, so I do fear slightly that perhaps the image quality under all of this isn't quite as good as maybe the competition, certainly in the same price bracket. You know, this isn't going to be a cheap camera. We're looking from, I think, around £6,000. It's going to be a quite pricey camera for the 6K, or even more so for the 8K version, which comes out later. And I wonder, that is going to be a very limiting factor. Who is going to really be their target audience in terms of purchasing this camera? I mean, you could say it's someone like us, someone who does a lot of interiors. Having that extra access when doing gimbal shots of interiors of rooms would be brilliant. That said, it's a very large package, and I'm not sure that's something we want to carry with us abroad, as well as another camera for all those scenarios where we don't want a gimbal, or perhaps sometimes where we want two cameras that are both handheld, or one on a tripod and one handheld. That's where mixing and matching is going to become a bit of a problem, more so than if you just go with another manufacturer and just one gimbal. Like the Blackmagic cameras, it does look like it's got a very impressive screen on it, and this is exactly what the FX6 should have had on its screen. It should have had a nice big 5-inch screen, or I think it's 5.5-inch screen on this DJI 4D. That is really impressive. I want to see bright, large screens appear on all cinema cameras nowadays. There's no excuse. You know, the cost of screens have come down massively with thanks to mobile phones making them so popular. You know, the screens we get on our phones are so good, we should be getting at least that in our professional cameras. Along with all the other DJI technology that's in there, the wireless monitoring solution, you know, you just know it's going to be brilliant. I've done a review about how great the Raven Eye is with the Ronin S2. It is really impressive. It works really well, and it's one of the best sort of compact transmitters out there. At least that's what I believe. It really does look like this is taking that one step further, and like the sort of image transmission that we've come to expect and trust on our drones, we're now going to see built in to this camera and monitoring solution. It's a very neat, smart solution, and that's kind of what makes me want them to release a normal version of this camera. Then maybe this makes more sense, having that as an A camera or as our gimbal camera, and then a B smaller handheld camera with the same tech inside but just more compact. That could be an amazing combination as a system. The LiDAR is an interesting choice. It has its advantages and disadvantages over the sensor-based autofocus technology. We'll have to see whether or not it really is a good solution. I think it does seem to have some issues in terms of focusing with further away. It also seems quite snappy, which can be a good thing, but perhaps not great sometimes where you want to have a more fluid and natural looking focus pull. Now, one concern I certainly have for this camera is its size, both for traveling, but also actually holding it. It was brought up in a couple of reviews about how heavy the camera is, and it's no surprise really in terms of when you see its shape and how it's built. It looks solid, and that looks great, and it looks a really impressive build quality. However, having to hold the camera up in that kind of very strained position in front of you could really become a problem over time. I'm not sure what solutions you'll be able to get around with that, and you don't really want to be adding even more setups like an easy rig or something, because that seems to defeat part of the reason why you're going for this system in the first place. But I do see that maybe becoming more of a problem when it comes to using the camera, that the weight might be the reason why you just don't use it. So I sort of said this before, with the price and everything and the design, who is this camera really for? And it's a tough one to know. It's such a unique camera. It's incredible. And you know, I think it's good value for money considering the tech involved and what you're getting. But it's still a big question mark about where would this camera fit in anyone's sort of setups. It would obviously be an additional camera, like the drone is an additional camera to your system. Outside of that, where perhaps you can afford to have this spare camera on the side, I struggle to see maybe where the camera is going to be used on a regular basis. At the price bracket it is in, it's competing with some very good cameras that exist out there. And in that world, you might not necessarily want to go and trust DJI with their first proper camera, and you might want to go with more of a safer bet like Canon or Sony or even Blackmagic now, who I think, you know, deserve the respect of saying they've established enough and the quality is good enough now where you can trust what they're going to produce. And just look at the Red Komodo. Wouldn't a Red Komodo on an RS2 generally be a better combination and solution than this camera? I mean, yes, you don't have the 4th axis gimbal, which is impressive, but outside of that, probably the Red is a more smarter solution. So this is where I think it's going to struggle, and I'm going to be really fascinated to see once they do the proper reviews and once we see more footage from this camera, where this camera could really fit in the industry. I can see specific uses and certain showcase uses for this camera, but I can't see it really competing directly with any of the existing cameras that are out there. And that could be its big downfall. If not enough people buy this camera because they don't have really enough use for it, then maybe that's where it will come to struggle in the future. Maybe they know it's just going to be this niche market item, and perhaps maybe that's why it's priced the way it is. Maybe they know people are just going to rent it on the odd occasion. Who knows? I'd love to get your opinions on this. What do you think this camera is going to be used for? Who do you think it's for? And do you think it's priced correctly? Or do you think perhaps they should have come in at a lower price point? And it'd be a lot to know actually if any of you actually may be going to order the camera anytime soon. I hope you've enjoyed my quick take on this. Well, it wasn't that quick after all. Plenty more videos coming very, very soon. Thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe as it massively helps. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.